I don't know if I have a copy of it, so I'd like one copy back. Okay? Okay. You need one over here?
She has one now.
She has one now, okay. And if anybody wants to get a hold of me, you have my name and address. I am a spiritualist minister. So if you need to get a hold of me for any reason and want to talk about anything, just call me up or fax me something. Okay? What happened at Rennes-le-Chateau was that I went 2 years to Rennes-le-Chateau. Last year I went and we landed at Nice and we drove all across to the base of southern France near Carcassonne, and when we were there, our bus started going through this area. Now I told you for about 200 or 300 years they were burning people alive in the area. Some of those people never transmuted into a higher plane of consciousness. They were discarnates walking around. So when our little bus went through, we were like a bullet of light. And we did meditations every morning and all the time on the bus. Pretty soon, every time I shut my eyes, I saw faces coming at me. Kids, knights on horseback, they just kept on coming at me. Finally, when we got up to Rennes-le-Chateau and halfway through the tour, I came up one morning and I laid down after breakfast and I said, I can't get off this bed. I don't know what's the matter with me. I feel like there's a ton of bricks on me. And my friend Barbara Faust, who's a dowser, said, well, it sounds like you've tracked some entities. So she started dowsing 100, 200, 1,000, 1,500, almost 1,800 souls had attached to our whole group. Okay? These were all people that had not, maybe from the Second World War, I don't know where they were from, but there were that many people attached to our little group. So I took Richard.
Mary, I just want to say, I'm an Army brat and I lived in France, lived in Verdun and Poitiers.
You want to stand up and talk so the camera can see you and talk loud enough?
I'm an Army brat and I lived in France and Germany, and I love to just go on long walks, and there are churches in France that are just filled from the basement to the top with bones. With bones.
Saints?
They're people's bones.
So anyway, I walked downstairs and I said, Richard and Pat, we're going to have to do something. Now Pat is a clairvoyant, can see better than I can see. So we went up on the hill and I said, well, I've heard of Norma Milanovic and I heard about the Arturians and they have places where they can help these people. So let's call in an Arturian ship. So we called in and a spaceship came over us and we started a vortex and the people started coming in, and all of a sudden 12 knights appeared around us. Knights Templar on their horses with their staff. Okay? And that's where I met my knights. They wanted to assist us in what we were doing. Because apparently they cannot generate vortexes on the earth because they're not in the physical. So, and then we were told to keep the vortex open. And after we generated this, because this were lines and lines and lines of people lining up to get into this vortex. Okay? What?
I had a feeling that vortexes were for dead people.
Honey, there are local ley lines all over. If you've had, like you go to where the battle was fought, what battle was it? The Gettysburg. You go there, and if you're sensitive, you cry.
My son does it. Many cemeteries, he can almost spot in an open field, he'll know where people die.
She says her son does that, where people die. Those are local ley lines. And if you create a vortex over them, you can pull them out and bless the land. And that's what you need to do. They're blocking the grid. Okay? So we generated this vortex, and afterwards we turned around, and there were 3 lilies. Now they were not there when we went up on the hill. There were 3 lilies. They just popped up from somewhere. They were about that tall, they were about that big. They were like little orchids. White. Yeah. I don't. Little. They were little. I don't know. There was some kind of wildflower. They just popped up. They may have been there when we went up, but we didn't see them. But they were in a triangle, just like we were standing. There were 3 of them there. We were taking them up. It would be a high pressure, honey. High pressures are clockwise. Yep. Okay, yes?
So when you bring the energy up, what do you do then? Is there any way you close it off? Or you
We left the vortex open. We were instructed to leave it open. The knights were there to protect it. So they guarded it.
So are we to do that too? Leave it open?
You ask the divas, you douse to see what you need to do. Okay? Every situation is different. This is why dowsing is so important. Okay, so when we were coming back down off the hill, Elaine and Carol were standing at the window, and when they got downstairs in the morning, we got on the bus, she says, I don't know what you did, but it felt like a ton of bricks came off of me. Because we were all involved with this. So that's where I met my knights. And then I was fortunate enough to go with Norma Milanovic to England last summer. And we went to all the sacred places. And there's such a thing as a double triangle, which Merkaba, you know, you spin one triangle this way, and we went to all the sacred places, even to the Tower of London. Now, a lot of people, when we were doing this, we were creating vortexes to do the same thing. Okay? That's what Norma had us do, and we went all over England. We went to Windsor Castle, yes.
Did you go down to Glastonbury where the
Yeah.
was? Did you feel anything in that area
Sure.
different?
That's where Joseph Arimathea is buried. And Joseph's tomb is there, and then the Chalice Well. We went to all these places. We created vortexes up on the Thor. We did all of these things.
Is the chalice at Glastonbury?
What?
Is the chalice at Glastonbury?
Yes, the Chalice Well.
So, in reference to the Merkaba, how do you do both at the same time?
Well, we formed a triangle, and half of us spun it one way. Then the other half stepped in, and they spun it down. So then we spun it all together. So you spun the top half first with half the group, the bottom half second with half the group, then we spun it all together. And that's how, well, we had 70-some people. No, this was last year. My book was done in '87. Okay? So we went all over England doing this. And I was a little bit upset because the first thing we did was at Stonehenge, and by the time we got through figuring this all out, we only had 15 minutes to look at Stonehenge. And here, one of the reasons why I came to England, because we had a schedule to keep and we had to get on the bus. We had plenty of time there, but it took us so long to figure out how to do this. Then we went to St. Michael's Mount. Yeah.
Did you see the new glyph that they found at Stonehenge?
I know. But one thing, we're going back in my husband and I are going back in September, and we have an appointment to go inside on the 23rd. We wanted to go on the 21st, but we're not going to be able to. But we have an appointment. One of our friends who is writing a book with Margaret Hinges, who has the crystal skull, who's very active in the Hedges. Yeah. What is her name? Hedges. I said Hinges. Hedges. She's helping Hedges write a book, and she has a lot of pull with the Historical Society, which owns the Stonehenge. And so I was told that we 5 who are going there, renting a car after our trip to Scotland, because I'm going to look up the Scottish Knights. So anyway, getting back to my story, is we went to St. Michael's Mount, and at St. Michael's Mount, 15 knights made a circle around us. Okay? Yes.
Where is St. Michael's Mount?
It's in England. It's way down in Cornwall it's way down there. It's a castle, and at high tide you can't walk out to it. Okay? So it's a big vortex out there. That's why there's a castle on it. So we made in a churchyard there, and our knights came in. So I said, wow, my knights are following me all over. And they were helping us grid the area. So before we go, I want to know at least a half hour before we're up here so I can do a meditation so you can meet your own knights. Okay? So let me know a half hour before the end of the talk so we can do that. Yes?
One more thing on the Merkaba. Both groups were spinning clockwise, or
No.
top group was clockwise?
The top group was, I don't remember. I think it was clockwise. The bottom group was counterclockwise. I don't really remember. But then, it may have been reversed. But then, for 3 minutes, we spun, each group spun them their own direction. So we had a Merkaba going.
Oh, I see, we have it.
Yeah. One group, we formed a triangle. One group spun it one direction for 3 minutes. The other group spun it the other direction for 3 minutes. Then, for 3 minutes, we spun it together. The same time. So that created a Merkaba, and we created a lot of them. Then crop circles began to appear, so we went to crop circles. Now what I really feel is as the Earth is being engineered, there are so many vortexes there that that area can be balanced and balance the whole grid. So I think somebody's helping us out until we become responsible enough to do this ourselves. And so a lot of people we were going to old castles, and like the Tower of London, a lot of people said, I don't want to go in there and help discarnates move up. You know, they said they didn't want to do that. So my knights played a nice little trick. We went to Avery, and we got going with the Merkaba, and before we were just forming the triangles, one of them came up and tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked, and I could just barely see him, and he says, I haven't met these English knights in a long time. We're going to the pub. So a bunch of English knights and a bunch of French knights went off to the pub. They said, you're responsible enough. See, they play with you. They're jokesters. They said, you're in this area, you're fine. So you don't need our guidance. Yeah, yes.
You know, with all the New Age type people that have come to these places, I understand that they've kind of shut them off, so you just can't go in there to
Yeah,
sacred areas.
yeah.
Because people have done stuff to just overdone it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe buried too many crystals, God knows what. But some of them, I'm sure, have done the right things, and they have done these things that you were doing. So, I mean, here you come along, and it's been all these years, it's been a few decades that New Age groups have been working, you know, in waves coming across from our country to over there. So, I mean, do you think there's still more vortexes to be done over there?
Honey, vortexes are tuning. When you detune something, you have to retune it. And it's a game going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The good guys tuning it, the bad guys on-tuning it. Oh, back and forth, back and forth. See, when the planet's tuned, you don't have pollution, you don't have anything. And things that with these little things that, what's his name? Slim has done, is he's cleared out smog out of Denver just with putting up his vortexes. So you can do all these things, yes.
You were talking about the Merkaba. When you create it, what is a Merkaba is supposed to be a ship or
Yeah, it's your own light body, and if you learn how to spin it properly, you raise your consciousness. Drumvalo Melchizedek has been teaching that for a long time. Some of you may have taken classes from him. I don't know how to spell Drumvalo. Merkaba. Yes.
You said that you feel the life forces are winning this game.
Mm-hmm.
What are the different reasons you say that?
Because I've been told that, but it's a very thin line. Okay, well, let's get to Rennes-le-Chateau. Yes.
how do you collapse the vortex?
How do you collapse? How we collapse that vortex? We went, and we collapsed it. Does that answer your question? We made discordant sounds and we visualized it collapsing. and it collapsed. And that's when Kathy came back. So, yeah, I would think so. This is Robin's book, and I just want to show you a picture of, this is Carcassonne. Can you see that? This is where they made Robin Hood. So you go to southern France, and you see southern England, the way it was during the 11th and 12th. See, there was no bombing during the Second World War, so you have a lot of cities that are still walled. Conveniently, we could reset the engineering up there. Okay? This is a picture of Rennes-le-Chateau. Okay? Can you see that? And of course, right here is the temple. And here is Magdalene's Tower. This is all the gardens back here that Berenger put up. Okay? Okay, that's the mystery of Rennes-le-Chateau. This is Berenger Saunier. And he went up there in 1880 to 85, hired by the Habsburgs. Everybody thought he found treasure. And there's a lot of things on the BBS done by Sinclair, who was interested in the Masons, and Henry Lincoln, who these three men, there were three men who wrote Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Now it's a mystery because this man became very wealthy, and he took this poor little community of Rennes-le-Chateau and started building roads and gardens and buildings and churches. It took thousands and thousands of dollars. So they all felt that he found part of the treasure up there. You had the Cathars, which were wealthy, that buried their treasure. You had the Knights Templar, which were taking this area. I showed you the gridding. That's where they wanted the headquarters, because this is where the Val-d'Euve was. This is where the Magdalene and Jesus probably taught, is in this area. So he went up there, and Mount Bucharest is just across the way. Now Mount Bucharest has so much energy, it's like Mount Shasta. You fly a plane over it, the instruments, they won't let anybody fly within 12 miles of it, because it's got such a strong vortex that it tilts the plane. Yes?
He also, because he felt guilty after he'd come back with what he found, I know people that are involved in this, and he left little messages, like he had Jesus holding a baby and Mary holding a baby. And it says,
He left messages all over.
we would know what he'd found in those.
But what he really did, honey, is he went up there, and this is what the Knights told me. He didn't find anything up there. He was paid by the Habsburgs to re-engineer the area so that they could gain control of this very powerful vortex.
Well, I was told by someone that was supposed to be a descendant of all this, I went to look anyway, that he did leave the statuary and the
Oh, sure.
all the little.
Yeah, this is all the pictures of it. You can come by and look at it. It's all recorded here. This is the house that he built. Okay? And see, this is the Magdalene Tower, where Henry Lincoln went up on top and drew the whole gridding out. You can draw the gridding out and look out through the different parts up here, and they're all pointing to different parts of the grid. So but he regridded the area. Nobody knows where he got his money from, and now Henry Lincoln, who did his last video on it, says he felt he was paid by the Habsburgs, but he didn't say why. Okay?
Can I be real cynical and offer a suggestion?
What?
This is actually, in a way, this offers the opportunity of the crown of the world.
The crown of the world?
Crown
this area, right?
Who do you think would want to purchase that?
Okay. So you see, this is it. What?
Are you hitting around like the people that are in that bloodline, those secret
Well, I'm not
societies
saying
in
that
Europe?
was that bloodline.
I mean, those people that believe that they
What they did, you see, they didn't have to purchase it. All they did is re-engineered it. And what we, a group of 12, and that's what your paper's about, set out. We didn't know why we had to go to France, and people started going, and then they were disconnected. They had a seminar over there with David Icke and Margaret Starborg, and people came all the way from England to hear him talk, but at the last minute, they'd spent all their money getting there, so they couldn't come to the seminar. So there was only, we were hand-picked. And David couldn't even finish his lecture. He lectured in the morning, but then what he did is he turned on music, and we did Scottish and Welsh and dancing up there all afternoon on the solstice. And we created a big vortex. And it was all planned. Now this is the alchemist. This is where the Knights Templar used to do alchemy. And this here is here, Toby's garden is here, and the Magdalene Church is here, and then Saunier's engineering is here. So it's all right in a line. And from that very morning on the 21st of June, there was so much activity at Bucharest that there were lines and lines and lines of spaceships. You know how you look over Mount Shasta and you see all of these things that look like spaceships? Well, there were clouds. And the people up there at Rennes-le-Chateau, when they look at Bucharest and they know there's ETs up there, they go like this. So we would meet people in the walkways, and they would greet us like this, which meant there were ETs all around. And so that's what you know, they would point to Bucharest and go, a lot of activity. They couldn't speak to us, but they wanted to tell us, we were American, that there were ETs over there. Interestingly enough, when we went to Eilat to see the birthplace of who was the one that wrote all the who was that? The Trails, the poet that tells the history. What's his? Nostradamus. He was born right in that area. And when we went there, one of the men who we went to his house, who owned the house where he was born, had been up on Bucharest Monday, and he saw two ships come in. Two big ships come in and land just a short distance from where he was. So when we arrived at Rennes-le-Chateau on Monday, there were ships that hadn't been there for a long time. He hadn't seen them for 3 or 4 months, he said. The whole place was beginning to fill up with ships again. All for this engineering.
So the people of that area, they're used to seeing these ships coming in?
Sure.
But the newspapers don't?
Well, it's a little French chateau. There's not much activity up there. It's like going out here, you know. That's where the movie Close Encounters of a Third Kind was created. How much time do we have?
It's 8 minutes to 9. If you want to finish at 9:30, I would say half an hour.
So we'll do our meditation in just a little bit. We'll finish the story of Behringer, okay? So we danced up there and created this vortex. And it started raining because Toby had invited about 10 of us to do a Native American dance on the eve of the solstice. But David Icke did a lot of dancing, and it started raining, and I told Toby, I said, we have created such a vortex here, Toby, and the earth is balancing. We don't have it anymore. It's gone. You'll have to find out where it is. So I told Toby, I says, I think you better wait 24 hours before we do any more engineering. And he looked up at the sky and he says, I think you're right. So we waited until the 23rd on Monday, and we went up to Toby's garden and we did a Native American dance. Now, he has a line of cedar trees, and the circle was big, and I was standing behind a cedar tree, and it was framing Bucharest, and a spider came down out of the tree and was sitting there. And when Toby came by, the spider just flew. I don't know where it went. It just flew away. Now, in Native American lore, spider means spider woman, and that represents the grid in Native American. The spider represents the grid, spider woman. And they even call the grid spider woman. And if you go out to Chaco Canyon, or not Chaco Canyon, but Canyon de Chelly, have a big pillar in the middle of it, and they call that pillar Spider Woman. And if you can see the grid coming into that, which is like an obelisk out there in the middle, you can actually see the grid lines coming into it, and it looks like a big spider sitting in that valley. So that's what they represent the grid with. So after we had danced and the spider went asunder, we went down to get in the cars, and here were these big black spiders moving a whole pack of eggs. Okay? When I saw the spider fly off the tree and its net on its web, a voice entered my head, and I saw two white objects leave the base of Bucharest. And what a voice said to me is, because of your engineering, the Greys can no longer have a nest at the base of Bucharest. Now, the Greys are not nice extraterrestrials. So in other words, we retuned the area. After we retuned the area, Toby said, when he spends his summers up there, he would only see one plane fly over. He saw 2, 3, 4 planes for the next week flying over every day. Some of them would circle and go away. So you see, what happens is, through satellites, you have an electromagnetic grid up here. And the minute you create a vortex like that and shut another vortex down, that's all recorded. So they were trying to figure out what we had done to do this. Okay? Yes? Try it.
Are you aware that there's a whole bunch of things going on in Bank County and
I think if you talk to a lot of people around here, they're not good things.
no, they're not. But at the INS conference a year ago, I got a paper on that.
What,
I asked Slim
well, one of the speakers here said is the reptilians are starting to tunnel up out of the grid in this area. So you guys had better start protecting yourself.
and not very far from where I live, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. I'm having quite a challenge where I am, so I'm very interested in doing.
Yeah, well, I don't want to mention a name. I'll ask him if he wants to talk to some of you about it. But this is he's a gentleman who has studied the inner earth quite a bit. And we were talking today, and he was telling me what's happening in this area. And I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't part of John Bonet's murder.
What's happening in this area?
The reptilians and the Grey, they're tunneling out. They have a base in the inner earth, and they're tunneling out here. And they need children to survive. So that's where that's what he was saying. It's new to me, people. I don't know.
Are the reptilians in the center of the earth?
No.
They're just
And they have bases, and you'd have to really talk to him. That's his, and I'll ask him if he wants to talk to any of you. I'm not that's not clear. I don't really want to say exactly what he told me. He is speaking here, and his life is in danger. Yes. So I told him to go see Dorothy. Dorothy, I think she has a lot of ways to teach you how to protect yourself.
What, is that the Denver area?
Yeah, that's what he said. The Talos. Well, I'd rather not mention names. I think a lot of you know who he is. No. No. He's going to give a workshop, and I'll see if he wants to talk about it, and then I'll tell you who he is. Okay? Because I don't really want to mention his name, because it's not my information. Okay, it's 9 o'clock. We'll
That's about Behringer. It sounded like he may have been paid by the Habsburgs, but what he did, in actuality, seemed like it was good stuff. Restoring the gardens and...
No. He created a vortex to change the frequency so the Habsburgs and the Greys and the reptiles could gain control of the area.
Did they gain control of the area?
It's very heavily guarded by the Knights Templar, honey. That's probably why Berenger Saunier was murdered, because he couldn't complete his contract. Okay? But they did some, obviously they did some engineering so that they could get into the base. But you have to understand, there's still instruments, there's still gridding, that if those instruments and those grids were started up, we would have control of the whole grid. Apparently they didn't make it. Okay? And apparently we went there to regrid it, and there's a whole English community of English people that are there that want to set up tours, that want to start bringing in light workers and setting up seminars. And I'll tell you, if I was ever to go back to the place, it would be very inexpensive to go. You could get a cheap airplane ticket over to Barcelona, rent a van, 6 or 7 or 8 of you, drive up there, stay at a hotel for about $350 for the whole week, and do all your own exploring. Do all your own gridding, because every time you go to one of these places, suddenly appears a knight who's guarding it, and you can talk to him, if you can talk to him, or you can douse out what they want. So, you know, that's the way I would go. If I was going again, I would never go. I don't think I would go with a tour. But it's nice. Robin, who just stuck her head in here, she's taking a tour there. And you usually can go for about $2,700 to $2,800. It's not too bad for one person. And go for 2 weeks over there. And they'll take you to all the places. But I don't think I would do that again. I think I would go by myself, you know. Because I've met, like Toby said, that any time that we wanted to come back, Dean and I, if he wasn't there, he would make sure that he would talk to the landscaper, and he would make sure that we had access to his chateau and his gardens if we wanted to go there. So that's the way I would go, okay? Let's get ready for a meditation. This meditation is for you to meet your guides, to meet your knights. Part of the reason why I'm out doing this is because they want to start working with you. Believe me, if the knights came over to the North American continent, they gridded this whole area too. And looking at the grid maps that I saw at the dowsers, probably they've been here. Okay? And maybe they didn't cause meteor crater. I don't know what happened. So I want you to take some deep breaths. Jay, which way's north? That way, everybody's pointing this way, but Jay says north. So we're going to do the 4 directions, so it's good to know which is north. We're not going to face north, we just need to mentally face north. Now, because we're building a standing column or wave, I want you to create a circle of stones. And because you're a knight, you're going to have a sword. Going to take some deep breaths, and you're going to stand in the middle of this circle, and you're going to face north. Now, just like the English and the French met, you start creating your own vortex. This time I want you, because you're on an upshoot, I want you to make a clockwise energy field. That means you're going from the north to the east, to the south, to the west. You're spinning your vortex that way. Now all of a sudden, 12 knights stand in the circle. These are knights, they may be different for each person, that want to work with you individually. Okay? So you got 12 knights. You got 3 knights to the north, 3 knights to the west, 3 knights to the south, and 3 knights to the east. And we're going to meet them. Each plays a different part. You're in your vortex. I want you to put your sword to pointing down to the ground with the handle up, and I want you to walk to the side of the circle. I want you to greet your 3 knights, shake hands, embrace. They're ready to work with you, and they're ready to work with you with the north energies. Now you put your swords up to the sky, and they become vortex generators working off the grid. Now, if you create a counterclockwise vortex off of your sword, you're going to suck energy back to you. So if you point that at a cloud, you can destroy a cloud in the sky. Isn't that wonderful? Now if you want to build a cloud, you point the sword up in the sky, and you go off to the side of the cloud, and you start a clockwise energy field, bringing energy up from the ground and through your sword. This way, working through the north, you can clear out smog, you can do whatever you need, and these 3 knights to the north are going to work with you in this fashion. Now you bring your sword back to your chest, and you walk back to the center, and you bow to your 3 knights, and you thank them for their help. This is all a mental exercise. This is all taking on at the astral or causal level. This is not in the physical. Now we're going the opposite way around. We're going to face west. So we go to the west. We walk out to the side of the circle. And you greet your knights there. You shake hands with the 3 knights that are going to work from the west. We're doing it a counterclockwise way. So we're creating a double helix. That's the kind of vortexes you want to work with. These knights are historian knights. They know of your past. So you ask them, and while you're working with these knights, they will help you understand your past. They will help you balance out the past. If there's any karma there, you replay it in your head so it's right. If you felt you've done something in the past, you ask forgiveness, you send love to it, and you replay it so it's right. So you take care of your karma from the past. You thank the knights for working with you. You bring your sword back to your chest, and you walk back into the center. Now you have the energies coming in from the north, and you have the energies coming in from the west. Now you have met 6 knights. Now we face the south, and we walk out to the south. These knights are alchemists. They know how to change the energy to change the manifestation of the mass. You embrace them, you talk to them, you feel the power of the light energy coming in from the sun, and you feel that joy. And you ask him to clear your energy field. Fill your energy field up with light. teach you about the spin of your vortex. These nights are alchemist nights. They will help you change the energy to change the manifestation of the mass. You embrace them, thank them, and walk back to the center. Now you have the power of the north, you have the power of the west, and you have the power of the south. Now you are going to face the east. And you meet 3 more knights. You walk out with your sword, you greet them. These are the knights that know of the future. They can help you with learning whatever you need to know about the future. They will give you information. They are dictionaries. They can tell you what you need to know. You embrace them, love them, and salute them. And you walk back into the center of the circle. Now you have met your 12 knights. You have 3 from the north, 3 from the west, 3 from the south, and 3 from the east. You have the 4 directions. The Knights Templar's cross was an equal cross of 4 directions. You raise that cross above your head and start spinning it in whatever direction you feel guided to do it. As you spin it, you open up the sides of the vortex, and you are standing in a higher frequency of light. And you greet all 12 knights. Now these are joyous beings. They aren't, if you make a mistake, they aren't going to, you know, you make a mistake once, it's one time. You make a mistake twice, it's all right. You make a mistake the 3rd time and you got a problem. The same mistake. So you ask them to help you and pray that you can work with them. Now you close your vortex back up, go back to the center, open up your heart chakra, take some deep breaths, and you know that you have the light within you so that you can make passage into a higher dimension anytime you need to. And you have the knights to work with you. You come back to the center of the room, take a couple more deep breaths, and just sit here for a second. See, these exercises are not hard, are they? And I think part of the reason I came here is to introduce you to the Knights Templar. So if you got guided to come here tonight, you got guided because you wanted to meet your knights, and the knights wanted to meet you. Okay? And any time that you need to, you can call on them and you can work with them. Of course, you don't ask for money and you don't ask for wealth. You ask for discernment. This is the age of discernment. In any area, when 144,000 of us learn how to practice this stuff and learn how to work, next year you come back here, you can probably tell me of 100 experiences that are even greater than the experiences that I've had working with the Knights. Because each person has an opportunity, and each person has something different to learn. Okay? We didn't get to the oils tonight, did we? Yes?
You all were talking about Egypt a little bit, Bill, and the Alba story and so forth. I was spending time in the early 80s in the education ARE, learned the chants that Edgar had channeled to, what they were. One of them was Ari Yom. I was just wondering when you were talking about all of your
Ohms?
the different syllables. Ari Yom, I remember, was one of them.
So these are very similar things that are used. This came from a group in Texas, the Association for the Understanding of Man. When I first got into this, they sent some information out, and this is how they opened up their session, by ohming through the chakras. Okay? Ray Stanford, you got it. I don't know whatever happened to them. They disappeared. Anyway, Ray Stanford, he was working with the spaceships. There are good spaceships and there are bad spaceships. As I said, what happened to us in 1968 is we were guided to build a pyramid for my then 3-year-old son who was dyslexic. And what we did and what we have told is, because ELF was going in up there, it was going in before, we were told that it would be necessary to do this to ensure that a frequency within the grid could be protected for the United States. Now you have to realize that this is on 0 deviation. In other words, the North Pole, you know, if you're a flyer and you go out west, you aren't straight north, you have to deviate the compass 11 degrees or 12 degrees. This is at 0 deviation. The Bermuda Triangle is at 0 deviation. The vortex that generated the Great Lakes vortex triangle, like the Bermuda Triangle, is at 0 deviation. So it's interesting that we set a pyramid between the Great Lakes area and the Bermuda Triangle, which we were told that balanced out. Then, of course, they put Seafarer in, which was a flat pyramid, which you had Praharovich and you had a few people coming here talking about the woodpecker signal, and all of that was all generated by Seafarer and making a flat pyramid in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and creating an extremely low frequency to run through the grid. Okay? And the excuse they gave you was because they had to communicate with submarines. Okay? Yes. Change the subject, yes. Please. Sure. Okay. Being that we have 15 minutes, we'll talk about the oils. I didn't know where I was going to go tonight. Now, one of the things that you have to realize about the oils is most of the oils are antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal. So when you look at them, doesn't matter which oil you're using, most of them are. If you don't want to buy an expensive diffuser, the best thing to do is to buy a little spray bottle, put about 15 drops in it, and spray.
I have them at my table if anybody wants them.
She has them at her table.
30.
Okay, you spray. Now you have to realize that when Moses wanted to create the, does that smell good?
Yes.
That's joy. The thing with, I'll go back to joy, but I'll go back to Moses. You know, we hear about the Hunter virus. We hear about this new strep virus that eats flesh. We hear about all these terrible things. I'm going to close the door. We hear about all these terrible things. How Moses created the Passover was a very simple thing. He put lamb's blood around the doors and the windows. But in the lamb's blood, he put hyssop oil. Okay? Gary Young has created a very inexpensive oil which will do the same thing. It's a combination of oils, and for $55 you can buy a first aid kit. It's got a tape with it. In that you have an oil called purification. Now, purification will take care of E. coli in the bowel. I'm a radionics operator, and when my cat gets sick, it's usually E. coli. All I have to do is put its paws in a little bit of purification and the E. coli goes away. Okay? Same thing with your feet. The same thing you do is we get a diffuser, you get a spray, and you spray your bed, You know, when you walk into these rooms, you don't know who slept in your bed before you. You don't know what germs are there. You don't know if some rat has died in the ventilated system. You know, you don't know these things. So if you get a little spray bottle with a little bit of oil in it and spray the heck out of your room, and if you have a little formaldehyde or something in there, all you have to do is take the lemon or the purification and put it on a couple cotton balls and stick it in the ventilator, and you clean the air.
You mix water with that, or?
Yes, to spray it you mix water. Now to put on your body you would not mix water, but to spray it, and if you use it in a diffuser, you buy a diffuser, you don't mix water with it. But this is a little spray bottle and you just take it and you spray it, and it makes it inexpensive. You don't need a whole lot, 10 or 12 drops in the water, in about a half ounce of water, an ounce of water. See, it mixes well and it sprays out, right? You smelled it, didn't you? Can you smell it in the back of the room? Yeah, well, that's joy, yes.
There's been a lot of talk about taking homeopathics and using Gary's oils because Gary's oils are so powerful. Have you found any problem with it?
What I do sometimes, hun, is I did an experiment. I had a client whose mother had sugar diabetes, was swollen up, and another homeopath had said it was a tuberculin myism. If you don't understand, myisms are what you inherited through the family. So she had inherited a tuberculin myism. So I doused it out. I put a 50 m tuberculinum in this person's mouth. We laid her on the table, pulsed her head and her feet like Gary taught her. She visualized her mother down in Missouri. Her mother got better. Okay? Working through the grid, many wonderful things. In other words, her mother took the 50 m and we pulsed her body with valor. Okay? Does that answer your question? If I have an accident case that I have to work with, I had a man who drove a double tandem truck and he tipped it over. This was maybe the first year that I signed up in February. This would have been like December. Some fool had stopped in front of him and he couldn't stop, so he spun the whole truck and tipped it over. Two semis together, double tandem. Tipped the whole thing over. Well, I think the man had a near-death situation at that time, and his wife says, I don't know what to do with Pat. He comes home and he starts crying. Just starts crying. I says, I think we better do an emotional release. Now what we were going to do is we were going to demonstrate an emotional release. You put somebody at the head and somebody at the feet, right hand to right side, so you have to cross your right hand to hit the right foot, and like this. Now at the top of the head, you're standing like this, so your right hand goes to the right side of the head, and you pulse his body. You hold it until you feel the pulse, balance in the body, okay? And that is an oil that Gary took off the walls at PLA, the Valor, and that pulses all the chakras. So if you took Bruce Tanio's device, it's only 47 hertz at the base, but when you get up to the crown chakra, your pendulum's going like this. So you're building on each chakra as it goes up. That's the beauty of Valor. So you pulsed his body with Valor, okay, and that balances the whole chakra system. Then, I don't usually ask people to remove things, but Pat is like 6'3" and about 3 of me. He's not fat, he's just big, okay? So I asked him to take off his shirt, and when he was laying down, I doused out Juvaflex. Juvaflex is for the liver. And I turned around and I said, my gosh, Pat, what did you do to your liver? He said, well, when I rolled the truck, the speaker unit went right up in here, right under this rib, and he was laying on it. And his liver, when you looked at it, this is where the liver is. This whole area, if I put a book on it, it would be slanted like that. Okay? So he had damaged his liver, and the liver is the seat of emotion. So what we had to do is we put Juvaflex on there and we started pulsing the body again. And what happened is, it's just like somebody took a pin in a balloon and that liver went right down until his stomach was flat. Okay? So that's how you do an emotional clearing. And of course, Gary's oils are expensive, but my teacher said to me, Mary, get a credit card, buy the oils. So I did. I put myself in debt. That time they were about $900 for a whole case. No, no, no. They're $1,200 now, and you get more oils. It's just that I have put extra oils in here. But you get 96 oils for $1,200. That's not a bad deal. Helichrysum alone, a little bottle of helichrysum, which we do to increase the synapses in the brain by what we did when we balanced that whole group. The helichrysum alone costs $50 for a little bottle. That's right. And you talk about Gary's oils. We went out to another conference, Dottie, my friend, and I, and we bought oils from the Swiss Aroma Company. They weren't that much cheaper, and they're absolutes. Absolutes aren't distilled. They're distilled with CO2 gas. Now, I don't really think I want absolutes, but they're billed as pure oils. So you got to know what you're buying when you buy them. And I have had wonderful success. I can tell you story after story, just like Pat's. Okay? And if the oils are used correctly, and people say, well, I don't know how to use them. Hey, I don't know how to use them either. What I do is I douse. You know, and you got them all set up like this, so all you have to do when you want to use an oil, I had no clue that Pat had hurt his liver. You know what I mean? So I just started dowsing, and I used stick like this, and I just went through, and I came up with Juvaflex. So I turned around and asked Pat what he did to his liver, and he told me. And when we looked at it, because he didn't have a shirt on, we could see his liver was all swollen up. But I had no idea that he had, and I could take a story on there, and he may never told me that. So I may have never known that his liver was hurt in the first place. You see, that's why dowsing is so important. Yes?
You put the oil on the liver?
Yes. I use all of Gary oils neat. And I carry with me a little bottle of V6, which is, I don't dilute any oils, not even on a little baby. Okay? I use the oils neat, which means straight. And I have not found that it hurts many people. Once in a while I find somebody that's a little sensitive, so I come along and just squirt the whole bottle of V6 or a whole dropper full of V6 right on the area, and in a few seconds the oil, the pain, the burning is gone. V6.
That's just a carrier?
That's a carrier oil that Dr. Young has created. It's got 6 vegetables oils in it. It's got almond oil, or it's got, what oils does it have in it?
It has sesame and vitamin E.
Has sesame, vitamin E, and he puts the vitamin E in it so it won't go rancid. Somebody wants in. Somebody want in? Yeah, yeah. It's like the skin's natural. Sebum. So it, and you never want to put water on an oil when it starts to burn, because that'll drive it in. People will say after I do, can I go take a shower? I say yes, because that'll drive the oil in. And that's exactly what you want. But if it's burning, you don't want to drive it in, because somebody want in? Oh. You don't want to drive it in. You want to neutralize it and take the pain away. So what you do is you put the V6 oil on it. So if I'm doing somebody, I don't worry about putting the oil straight on them, because I've found other people's oils who are distilled with CO2 gas or some other way. But Gary balances his oils. He gets a gas chromatograph, and he makes sure that all the components are in there correctly, and he makes sure that the frequency's in there. And if you have to raise your frequency, chances are when you're healing, you're not going to burn. Okay? They're all steam distilled. on the farm if he grows them himself organically. He won't buy anything but a steam. The citrus, no, some are cold pressed. And jasmine, jasmine is the only oil that you can't buy. It's a CO2 distilled oil. So that's the only oil that he carries that's CO2 oil. Yeah. You have a question?
Yes. Do you know anything about frankincense and myrrh? Anything about the oil, being oils that we're taking?
Okay, there's a component in the oils called suscoterpenes. Suscoterpenes cross the blood-brain barrier. So if you have an oil like cedar, which the Native Americans use, they use fresh cedar, and that smell crosses the blood-brain barrier. Frankincense, myrrh, and what's the other one? Sandalwood. Yeah, sandalwood. They are all high in suscoterpenes, and that's why they are used to raise the frequency in man's brain. Okay?
Lavender and lemon have suscoterpenes also.
Lavender and lemon have suscoterpenes also. And a lot of the other oils have suscoterpenes, but these are the 4 oils: cedar, sandalwood, myrrh, and frankincense are the ones that are high in a percentage of sandalwood or suscoterpenes if they have been distilled properly. Now, you take cypress oil, takes 21 or 24 hours for Gary to steam distill it. It's slow. You steam distill an oil quickly for perfume purposes, and you make it a terpene alcohol. You take the suscoterpenes, the phenols, the aldehydes, all the things that are going to do healing for you out of it, because you do it under high pressure and fast, and that dissolves them. So you may have a pure oil, but you may not have anything in that oil. You see? And what Gary says, he says he'll be glad to give you a gas chromatograph of all what's the components are in the oil, and he also will tell you the frequency of the oil if you ask the company. I have never challenged the company, so I don't know if that's a reality, but he says it. Okay? Yes? What was the oil that you used to get rid of the trauma in the amygdala gland? It depends on the emotion that the amygdala gland was put there. Gary has joy, he has forgiveness, he has these names, abundance. So if you had a problem with abundance and that's where your fear is coming from, you might have to use abundance. If you're dying of cancer and the fear is coming from that, you might have to use hope. You see, Gary's made it easy for you. One time I was at a psychologist's office, Jean Ford, in West Palm Beach, Florida, and she had a little group there, and she had a couple of her clients there, and she really didn't want them there. So one of the little girls, 19 years old, raised her hand and says, "Would you find me an oil to balance my chakras?" So I put a drop of spruce on her wrist. Spruce wouldn't burn. And I had her rub it and smell it. 5 minutes later, this lady started screaming. She was on fire. She was burning up. Jane thought she wanted attention, so she took her out in the hall, and I said to Jane, "She's starting an emotional release." So we put her on the table. She had been taken as an adept to the Amen priesthood in Egypt, and there the priest had cut her from here to here, took out 3 of her astral bodies to use, and threw her in a burning pile of spruce. The smell of spruce at the amygdala gland created that memory, and she started reliving it. It took us an hour and a half to get her calm. Some people were frightened. It was at the end of the lecture. I don't know why. I always look and say, "Why? Me?" But I guess it's because I know how to handle it, and I'm not going to freak out. At least I haven't yet. Because what's important, people, is these people are in trouble. They're not playing games. You know how to balance them with the oil. You get them balanced, and you get them talking. And once you get them talking, they will tell their story. Now, and when they tell their story, usually you can separate them. Yes?
Do you have any call like the sap that comes from the trees in South America? Call incense
I don't know. I'd have to look.
that represents that?
Cardamom. I don't know. Cajeput I have. I don't have, I thought maybe I did, but I have Cajeput. I don't have copal. But there are 2 oil companies that Gary has. He has, you can get a lot of the oils that are not listed if you belong to, call up the Career Labs.
I have the phone number in my purse.
So if you wanted to call Career Labs, you might be able to get copal. But Gary doesn't have all of the oils, but he has a lot of them that he doesn't put out on the market because he feels that the oils that he's put out, he's tested and will not hurt people.
It's C-R-E-E-R, Career.
Career Labs.
It's spelled C-R-E-E-R, not C-A-R.
C-R-E-E-R. Career Labs.
Career.
Okay, and you can call and see if they have, because they have a lot of the oils that are not listed. Did you have a question over here?
Yes, you said that you had used Bruce. What oils did you use to bring her back?
What oils did we use to bring her back? We started out with Valor. And the only oil we could use on her was Pain Away. Because she started screaming, she was in so much pain, and Jane, "You're not in pain!" We got tired of her. I mean, maybe that isn't oil.
Oil.
But that's, through dowsing, that's all we could do. And it took us a while to get her quieted down. And once we did, we got the entity outside. But sadly enough, she didn't want to leave this. She wanted this entity.
She had the entity of that experience around it.
She had, yeah, the priest had gotten into her and was living in her because they weren't separated. And she wanted to keep that priest.
The priest took her,
Astral bodies.
why did he have to cut her? He was just taking an astral.
I don't know why he had to cut her. That was what he did. They used to bury him alive, too. I've done people that they buried alive, and as they came out of the ground, they took their essence to use for their own.
Why don't you kill him first and then bury him and take the essence?
I don't know. I've had some screaming people.
Did you use just rescue remedy for that?
Honey, you start out with a Valor, and then you ask what oils they need. If that's all you had, you use rescue oil, but if you've got something else,
Not real, I mean, it's like
the rescue remedy, I know what rescue remedy is. It's Bach flower.
down somebody who is hysterical and
Honey, you do what you have to at the time. So that's why I didn't mind taking Kathy, because I knew she needed help. And you see, the first time that I ever did anybody, I did a little 9-year-old girl who they were going to take to the hospital, to the Serine Hospital, cut her ligaments because she's never walked or never stood by herself. And so her mother came to me and I says, well, I just got these oils, let's try an emotional release. So she started screaming, and she went right back into the hospital when she was a premature child, where they stuck a needle here and they stuck a needle in the bottom of her feet, and she started reliving that. And that's when they did brain damage to her. And if we would have continued it, but Gary said never to let them scream, so I stopped it, and I scared the mother. And the mother called me up and she said Jessica stood for the first time all by herself after we did that. But the father heard about it, and he would have nothing to do with what we were doing. It was voodoo. It was witchcraft. And he didn't want his daughter to go through that. So they took her to the Seriners, and I've never heard of her from her again.
Are you saying that it would have been better for her just to keep on
Screaming, yep.
until she was finished?
until we put peace and calming on her and quieted her down with the oils. But I freaked. And that's karma. You know what I mean? It was my lesson as well. It was the child's lesson. And you will find that people come to learn these lessons. And it was a choice that the mother and father had to make. And it was a lesson for them too. What?
I guess it was a karma for the child.
Yeah. But if we would have continued, I think that, see, what I did is I talked to the mother and called her up because she had purchased the oils. And I just told her, I says, when the father's not there, when he's off to a ball game, just put a candle at the top of the head and hold the feet with the oils that we doused out for her. And the next day she called me back, and Jessica had always scooted across the floor, and for the first time she rolled over and crawled. Cross-crawled. After the mother did it. So who's to say where the child would have gone if the oils would have been allowed to be used on her? You see? So you asked me what oils you need. I would suggest to you to learn how to douse if you want to work with your family, and then buy a case or buy the little kits, you know, like the first aid kit and the Seventh Heaven kit, and buy some of the kits. You have the feelings kit, and then go from there and start working with what you need to work with. Okay? Yes?
I'm interested in that you have a dyslexic son. I also have a dyslexic son, and he's extremely dyslexic, but he's extremely sensitive about seeing things like you can walk in a cemetery and actually see the faces of people that were buried. And he's also bothered by authority figures. He gets in trouble with police a lot because he cannot seem to play the right game it is whenever you meet a police officer.
Okay, what it is with dyslexia is when you go up into a higher frequency like the negative on a picture, it's reversed, isn't it? Dyslexic children have this problem. They are probably fourth dimensional instead of third dimensional. And fortunately, I was dyslexic, my father was dyslexic, so we dealt with dyslexia in a different way. Okay, you have to love them a lot. They never learn to read, and not until they go through puberty. Then at puberty, you can teach them to read. How old is he? Well, John really doesn't know how to read either, but they seem to come into the third dimension when they go through puberty. But we had to build John the pyramid to keep him in the fourth dimension. Okay? So that's why we built him a pyramid. Okay? Yes?
You mentioned about Carrie Young's demonstration about tearing the brain. Was that enough for us to know what you did there?
Well, I can demonstrate it, but I think our time is up, and if somebody really wants to do it, I don't mind doing it if there's time. I have my oils here.
Okay.
I would be glad to do it for you, but we can't do it when the whistle's blowing, and we can't. It takes about 20 minutes.
I just thought this gesture you did, I thought maybe there was more to it, or maybe that was it.
No, it takes about 20 minutes, and you put the oil in the ears, and you pump the head. And we did this for the whole group at the USPA because of all the engineering that had been done. And there were nights there, and as we cleared, my friend, the doctor, can't remember what her name is. Anyway, it seemed to clear out the other people because we're working with light.
What was the oil you put in the ears?
It's always helichrysum, honey. You never want to drop it in the ears. You just want to put it around the ears, and then you shake the head, and then you put other things around to get the drains open here. And I did this to a lady who had dementia. She's 89 years old or something, 87, something like that. And she came to my house. She's always been a good client of mine. In fact, when she thought she had a stroke, she flew home, didn't go to the medical doctor. She came to see me because she thought as a homeopath I could, and as a radionics operator, I could really determine what was going on. She came to me and she says, Mary, I'm losing my mind. I can't remember things. I'm getting scared. This is probably the last time I'll be able to drive over to my granddaughter's because her granddaughter lives in Hopkins, which is 6 or 7 miles away from my house. So I thought, well, what's to lose? I'll do the ears, which increases the firing of the synapses in the brain. So I did her ears. Now both granddaughters, one lives 1.5 miles away from me by the little store out there, you know, Dottie, and the other one lives in Hopkins. They're both nurses. One nurse came to me and radionically she was spotting, she has 3 boys, she was having another child, she was spotting at 2 or 3 months, and what we've learned with the progestins cream, that you have a lack of progesterone. So I checked for abnormalities with the radionics machine, I checked for tubular births, everything was all right. So I told her she needed no more progesterone. And she had her baby, the baby's 2 months old. Now, the grandmother comes to me and I do this. It puts her into emotional release because what emotion does she have stored in her? Fear. I watched her for an hour. We talked for an hour after I did it. I thought she was all right. By the time she got to her granddaughter's house 1.5 miles away, she was crying. She was carrying on, and her granddaughter thought she was having a stroke. You know, because she couldn't remember. She stuck her fingers in my ears and moved my head, and it hurt a little bit. And then she opened these drains here, and that hurt a little bit. You know, it's when you have to do these things, it hurts a little bit sometimes. So fortunately, she called the other granddaughter. The other granddaughter called me, and my friend who's a chiropractor was at my house, and I went over to her house. We did an emotional clearing on her. And you know what, people? She can drive around now and she's not afraid. But that needs to be done about every week. So they bought the oil, and one nurse is going to do it to her every week. So that's it. It's time. Okay? You want to stand up and tell them that? You're doing it. There's people here in the Denver area that can do this and teach it. This is Donna, and so if you're in the Denver area.
Yeah, we teach also. We teach the technique, the makeup therapy.
Oh, I was going to hand you these papers out on the oils. You can come and get one. This helps you. I didn't get to it. I'm sorry. So get one paper if you want it.
If you want to stop by our booth, we're number 30. If you're interested in classes, we have a sign-up sheet, and we will let you know when the next one is. But Iris and I try to do
Just pass them out.
in the Denver area. That's far north of Fort Collins.
All I can think of is clouds.
South of
Who's teaching you how to use the grid to